Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second week of the course. I'm hoping everybody had a chance to review the course Blackboard site, introduce themselves, as well as complete the syllabus quiz. If you haven't done so, unfortunately, those windows have closed, and as you will notice with this class, we will be running on schedule, and so there will be no opportunity to go back and complete assignments that you have missed once the windows have closed. You should by now be separated into your groups, and your groups are named after streets here in Cleveland. If you added the class late and you are not in a group, please let me know because this week we will be moving on to group assignments. But before I talk about the housekeeping matters for this week, I wanted to just talk to you guys a little bit about some of the content that we'll be covering this week. Your reading assignment for this week will come from Morse Chapter 1 and Mueller Chapter 1. And both of those books are pretty closely aligned on the content that they cover. And so what we will be looking at is the source of the U.S. multicultural population and how marketing industry or even the entire atmosphere in the U.S. has changed as a result of immigration into the U.S. by people from all across the world. So, like I said, what we will learn first and foremost is that immigration is one of the major sources of diversity in the U.S. If we look at the early 20th century, majority of immigrants coming into the U.S. were from Europe, whereas in the early part of the 21st century, we were talking about now Hispanics. Powering the growth in the U.S. population. And during that time, Hispanics out of Mexico accounted for 1/3 of that immigrant population. And so we are seeing where that trend has really fueled the population, because when we think about it, it's not just immigrants that come in, but also their children who were born here, intermarriages that occur between cultures and races, which have produced bicultural and multicultural people. One of the things that you will also notice based on your readings, especially of Morse, is that there has been a shift in attitudes of the general American population as it relates to immigrants. And so even in the early 20th century, when the Europeans were coming in, there was this fear that these people were coming in and they were inferior. They did not know the language, which was English at the time, which was thought to be English. So they didn't know the language, and they were not very welcome, and they were forced pretty much to assimilate to American culture. However, that attitude has changed, and with that change in attitude has meant that assimilation is not necessarily a requirement in order to be successful in the U.S. In fact, both books talk about the melting pot versus the mosaic, and in past times, people used to refer to the U.S. as a huge melting pot, meaning people came here and they became American. However, that has changed because we now refer to the American culture as more of a mosaic or a salad bowl when you think about it. So it's all these different cultures coming together. The American culture has been affected by the cultures of these people coming in, and these people themselves have also been affected by the American culture. And so cultural change does not occur just one way anymore, meaning immigrants coming into the U.S. and adopting American culture, but we're seeing where the change has happened in both ways. So also the U.S. culture has changed. If you look at, even the foods, the music, we can see where those changes have taken place in what we considered normal everyday life, everyday food, everyday styles of clothing, everyday music has changed as a result of the increasing diversity in the U.S. As I said, the result that this has produced is a more bicultural, multicultural, multilingual population. And so you have people who are from two or more backgrounds, and so they speak two or more languages. Hispanics, for example, even the Hispanic children born here in more recent times tend to, even though they are most comfortable speaking English and can communicate pretty effectively in English, they also speak Spanish as well. And so they also then have changed how media is consumed. And so in the past, we would see where minorities were portrayed based on stereotypes, and so Hispanics were, in many instances, portrayed as those lazy men in sombreros taking a nap in the middle of the day, or trickster type individuals. The African Americans were portrayed more of like the mammy figures or those cartoon characters. We had the stereotype of the Chinese laundromat or laundry person. And so all these various groups had those points in their histories in U.S. media and advertising where they were being portrayed pretty much stereotypically. That has changed. In the 60s and 70s, that began with the introduction of minority advertising agencies, and so that began with African American serving agencies. And now we see where there are a number of exclusively Hispanic advertising agencies, African American advertising agencies, and now even the major advertising agencies have tried to develop shops, meaning departments inside those agencies that are primarily focused on advertising to minority populations. And so whether or not they identify a specific group, so they have maybe a Hispanic serving department, or they have a multicultural serving department. And so we're seeing where that has changed. Media has also changed. We've seen where TV has not, we have several minority serving media outlets. And so at the time that Morse was writing his book, he was talking about Univision, which is still a huge powerhouse in terms of Hispanic media, but that has also changed. We have now seen where it's so many other networks that are out there, right? We have, of course, for the African community, we have BET, we have Centric, and all those other media channels. We also have for the Hispanic community, we have Telemundo, Tres, but then we also have even major networks now investing in minority serving channels. So even from HBO, Fox, MTV, all of those big media television outlets now have minority serving channels. One of the things that we should point out is that in the past, we used to equate multicultural advertising or minority serving advertising as in-language advertising. So especially for immigrant groups who may have spoken other languages, it was thought that advertising to these people in their language from their home countries was sufficient. But that is not the case anymore when we think about the fact that for immigrant populations, we have where births are outstripping immigration, especially for the Hispanic population. We can see, and of course, we can see that we are now dealing with a minority population that is more bicultural. They identify as American, they identify as Hispanic or Asian, or any other country, and they also consume mainstream media. And so not only are we seeing language specific advertising now, but we're seeing fusion types of channels that try to cater to the American person who is, for example, Hispanic, speaks English, but still identifies with the culture. We are also seeing where mainstream advertising is changing. And so when you are sitting down during prime time watching the Super Bowl or something like that, you will find that you might see an ad that has a grandma who is speaking in Spanish, but a teenager or a young person who is speaking in English. Major corporations have been doing that type of advertising. Wendy's, Wells Fargo, Tide, P&G, that is, have done that type of advertising. So we're not only seeing where advertising and media is now confined to these minority serving platforms, but we're seeing where mainstream platforms have also been changing because, again, these bilingual, bicultural, multicultural individuals demand content where they are consuming it. So they're not going to be content with just going to a BET or Univision or Telemundo or Tres to consume in language content. They want to see it on ABC or NBC or Fox, any channel that they're watching or consuming media from. They want to be able to access content there. They do not want to be confined. And so we see where the media landscape has changed. So what we are seeing is the increasing influence of the multicultural consumer. And when I say the multicultural consumer, what I'm talking about are literally people who can claim two or more cultural influences in their background, right? And one of the reasons why, or some of the reasons why the multicultural consumer have become more important is, one, increase in size. They are fueling the growth in the U.S. population. Also, buying power. Their buying power is increasing exponentially. Educational attainment. They are enrolling in college, getting those degrees, and are now able to command larger salaries. And so we're talking about more affluent people who have the disposable income to purchase. And of course, the growth in size cannot be underplayed in making them a very influential population. So, for example, let me give you guys, because I know both books have statistics that are a little bit dated, and my encouragement is always, please spend some time going to Pew, reading through some of the more recent reports that are in the course library, using secondary information to get the most up-to-date statistics. Do not regurgitate any of this the current statistics, because those are from '08 roughly, or even before, for these books. The census in 2010 came out, and since 2010 we've had so many updates, additional information that has been released, especially when it comes to statistics about buying power and size and stuff like that. So you always want to make sure that the information that you present for any assignment or discussion is current, because again, these books, whenever we use books that have figures when it comes to population and stuff like that, they go out of date very, very easily. Okay, so just an update on some of the current statistics. Minorities, based on the last census, were 37% of the U.S. population. As I said last week, they are on track to be 51% of the U.S. population by 2050. As I said, births have surpassed immigration, and we are finding where the median age of minority populations are significantly younger than the non-Hispanic white population. And when I say non-Hispanic white, what I'm referring to are whites who do not claim any Hispanic background or Hispanic heritage, because Hispanics are not just brown, they're many colors, but we get into that later. Let's stick to some of the facts. And so instead of Hispanics being the fastest growing immigrant group, we're having Asians that are now the fastest growing Asian group, immigrant group. Actually, roughly 74% of Asians were born abroad, and most of them actually come into the U.S. with a bachelor's degree. Fun fact. We learn a lot more about some of these things as we go on in the course. 131 Hispanics are born every hour, right? And so they are, when you talk about the infant and population of children, huge proportion of those populations. And what we're seeing also is increasing rates of intermarriage. So 14.6% of marriages in 2008 were between people of two different races, and that was double the number 10 years before. Okay, we are seeing where minority buying power, according to Selig, and Selig is out of the University of Georgia, has reached $3 trillion in 2013 and is expected to be $4 trillion by next year. College enrollment is growing, like I said, and media consumption, they also consume more media. So African Americans consume 37% more TV than any other ethnic group. for example. Hispanics are the fastest adopters of new technology. So we have all of these current facts. And if you, like I said, Nielsen, Pew, and all these sources are very, very good for getting up-to-date information on current statistics. All of this is pretty much the foundation for where we're going. What I want us to take away at the end of this unit is, one, where the source of the U.S. diversity is coming from. Two, the growth of the multicultural population. Three, why they are growing in influence. Why are they becoming so important? Why is it impossible for marketers to ignore these populations? Why is it that some businesses basically sink or swim based on the strength of their multicultural marketing campaigns? And so in looking at minority populations and the changes that have occurred and how they have changed the U.S., you'll begin to see why we even need to study a topic like this and why it is important for marketing professionals going out into the industry today, marketing and business professionals going out in the industry today. It's very important for them to have these skills, to have the knowledge that you're going to be gaining in this course. So that's enough of content. Like I said, please go ahead and read the chapters. You will find out a lot more. You will see a lot of the things that I talked about. And like I said, my figures are way more current than the ones that are in the book. So you have to bear that in mind. And I encourage you to start doing some reading yourselves, keeping up with current information. Okay, so what you have to do for this week, you have to read chapters 1 of Morse and Mueller. So those are 2 books. You're going to read chapter 1 in each book. There is a copy of chapter 1 for each book in the course library. So if you don't have your book yet, please go ahead and grab that chapter from the course library and read it. Both chapters are relatively short. Please make sure that you guys go ahead and read them. We also have a document on the course site, and it's going to be below this video. 6 disruptive trends from the census. Please read that. Again, these are some of the major things that we have seen based on the census. And like I said, more current information comes out every single day. You also have a discussion board post due, and this is going to be your first content-based discussion board. Your initial posts are due by Wednesday at midnight, and your 2 responses to 2 classmates' posts are due by Friday at midnight. You have to post on 3 separate days in order to get full credit for this assignment. Meaning, when you initially post, you post Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, one of those days. That will give more people an opportunity to be able to respond to your initial post. What I don't want is people getting on the site on Friday and responding to 2 people. We're trying to encourage conversation since we are trying to have a discussion. And so by logging in one other day after Wednesday and responding to 1 or more persons, and logging in another day and responding to another 1 or more persons, you will have your 3 responses. So if you're going to plan your calendar based on that, you would have to post pretty much Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Unless, of course, you do what I recommend and make your initial post earlier, and then you can get on your discussion boards and post as you have time, as it relates to responding to posts. Okay, so that's it for this week. I won't necessarily lecture, but every week I will post a video that really talks about some of the content, will provide additional perspective as well as updates based on more current information that I have available. As always, feel free to send me an email if you have any questions at all, or try to make an appointment to come and see me if you have concerns. I look forward to talking with you guys, whether by email or by phone or in person, and I'll see you next week.